Hello everybody and welcome back here once again to IndySportsCrew.com. I'm Thad Van Diemender and happy Selection Sunday to all you college basketball fans out there, as we know we have a ton here in the state of Indiana. So what we're going to do right now real quick, a little quick reaction, first glance at the 4 teams from Indiana that are going to be in the big dance coming up starting on Thursday or Friday for all the teams making it from our great state. And the seedings and everything came out tonight. A lot of storylines going on. A lot of things the selection committee did here in Indianapolis, where the selection committee is held and where the headquarters of the NCAA are. A lot of storylines going on. A lot of things to look at, and we'll look at a little bit of that, some news and notes at the end. But let's first start with the 4 teams from the state who are in the big dance, and let's start with the Indiana Hoosiers. The Hoosiers earned the #1 seed in the East region. Yeah, that's the East region, which would go through Washington, D.C. if they were to make it to the Sweet 16 and or the Elite 8. That was one storyline that we'll get to with the Hoosiers, but they do get moved to the East as the #1 seed, but they are still a #1 seed for the first time in, I believe, 20 years since 1993. They're going to take on the winner of LIU Brooklyn, which is Long Island University Brooklyn, or James Madison. Those two teams will face off in one of the first 4 matchups that's going to be in Dayton, which is where IU's second round game and third round game would be in the UD Arena there in Dayton, Ohio. So a local flavor there for IU. Should have a lot of fans make the trip over to Dayton, as it's just across the border. But so you're going to open up against the 16 seed. You're going to go ahead and we're going to say that they're going to take care of business in that first game and move on to the second round, the round of 32. But let's get back to where we were talking about before in the overall seeding. A lot of people going into this weekend had Indiana as the #1 overall seed, or projected to be the #1 overall seed, which would have given them the #1 seed in the Midwest region. And as a lot of you already know, the Midwest region goes through Indianapolis this year. That could have been a huge home court advantage for the Hoosiers, getting to the Sweet 16 and playing in front of, I'm not kidding you, 60,000 people there at Lucas Oil Stadium. Would have been key. Didn't happen. Louisville, the University of Louisville, gets the #1 overall seed. They are in the Midwest Regional, just 90 minutes away from campus for them. Makes sense as well. They earned that with the Big East regular season co-championship and the Big East Conference Tournament Championship, so they're the #1 overall seed, moving the Hoosiers to the East region. Still not a bad deal for IU. They're going to start in Dayton, move to Washington, D.C. As everyone knows, IU has a huge alumni base on the East Coast there, New York, New Jersey, even Baltimore, so should have a lot of fans making the trip to Washington if they're able to make that. A couple of news and notes, I guess you would say, about the region. I feel like the East region, in comparison with the other regions, would be the third as far as difficulty. First big test for IU could be in the Sweet 16 if Syracuse is able to win their first 2 games. They play that tenacious 2-3 matchup zone that Jim Boeheim's run for 150 years that he's been coach at Syracuse. That could cause IU some problems because it does tend to slow the game down a little bit and keep it low scoring, whereas IU likes to get out and run and score a lot of points. That way we all know. As far as other teams in the bracket that I think could give IU difficulty, this would be much further down the road. I really think IU is going to take care of business in their first 2 games, get to the Sweet 16. There it kind of becomes a toss-up. If Syracuse is able to get there, that team could really give IU some difficulties. But if Syracuse bows out early, there are a couple teams in the mix there that I really think that they can handle. That would be UNLV, California, and Montana. If any of those 3 teams get out of there, I think they play the style that IU would like to play. Even though UNLV is very talented, I've seen them play a million times. I think they have a lot of talent. I think that's maybe the best team that IU has to match up with moving forward in the Sweet 16. In round number 2, they would play NC State or Temple, both 2 teams that I really think IU can match up very well with, and I expect them to get through that. In the lower half of the bracket, there's 2 teams in particular I think play the style that IU does not match up very well with. That's the Butler Bulldogs, which we'll talk about in a second, and Marquette. Those 2 teams, very physical, in-your-face style of defense where they're going to knock you off where you want to go. Those are the 2 teams I see as the biggest disruptors, I guess you would say, on IU's march to the Final Four. Miami of Florida is in there, but Miami of Florida, as far as the way they match up with IU, those two teams match up very well. I think Miami could beat Indiana in a game, but I like the matchups there, and I think IU would get that done if they were to square off in the Elite Eight. Now let's move on to the second team, that is the Butler Bulldogs that I just spoke of. They're the number 6 seed in the East region. They're actually going to open up in Lexington, Kentucky for their first round game against the Bucknell Bison. Bucknell, for those of you who don't know, very good team out of the Patriot League. They finished the season 28-5, and any coach out there will tell you don't win 28 games in a season without being a pretty dang good ball club, and that's what Bucknell is. And for a lot of you who don't remember, if you remember back just a few years ago, Bucknell was a 14 seed that took down a number 3 Kansas. They're a team that really knows how to play. They've had a long history here in the last 10 years or so of being a good team and being very competitive in the tournament. And if you don't want to look at the past and think, oh, that's in the past, it doesn't really count to this year. Purdue fans can attest that Bucknell's very good. Bucknell beat Purdue in the opener this year. They've also beat New Mexico State, which is in the tournament, LaSalle, which is in the tournament, and who beat Butler in the regular season, and Kent State, who was the second best team in the MAC this year. So they've played a lot of good teams and got a lot of really big wins for Bucknell. So that's a team that Butler has to really watch out for. But I like how the things shake out for Butler against Bucknell. And in that second round, that's when it gets tricky because I feel like it's going to be Marquette, who's the number 3 seed in the East. Butler against Marquette in that third round, could be just a slugfest with those two teams, as physical as they play. And, as we all can remember, it'd be a rematch of what happened out in Maui, where Butler beat Marquette at the horn on a Rodney Clark 3 that he threw off of one leg and threw it in one-handed from about 30 feet. So that would be an interesting storyline there as well, with a rematch from something that happened around Thanksgiving. I just don't know if Butler has what it takes to beat Marquette, but I don't know if Marquette has what it takes to beat Butler. I think that would be a great showdown and really would be a toss-up game. It would be who to make more shots down the stretch in the second half. No one wants to play Butler on a turnaround and when you only have about a day and a half to prepare for them, so that would be interesting. Moving on now to the third team in the state, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the number 7 seed in the West Regional, but they're also going to open up in Dayton, Ohio. They're going to be taking on Iowa State, the Cyclones out of the Big 12. Iowa State, very good basketball team, coached by the mayor, Fred Hoiberg, which a lot of Pacers fans will love that the mayor is back into the tournament with Iowa State. But Iowa State's very good. They beat a lot of good ball clubs in the Big 12. They beat Kansas State. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Oklahoma. Really good team. They can really score. They like to get up and down. They're 4th in the nation in scoring per game at 79.6 points per game. So Notre Dame's probably going to want to run a little bit of their burn offense, get it down to Jack Cooley, get it down to August, get it down to Tom Knight even, and then try to spread them out late with Connaughton, Atkins, and Grant driving and dishing, or driving and getting into the lane and to the rim. So I like the matchup for Notre Dame. I think Mike Bray is underrated. I really, really think that they're going to get it done in this first round game, and then they would move on. Going to be a really tough matchup in that second round for Notre Dame against Ohio State in Dayton. Now, we all know that Notre Dame travels pretty well, but playing the Buckeyes in Dayton would be a chore. It's going to be a basic home game for Ohio State. But I will say this. Indiana's also in Dayton. I feel like that could maybe offset a little bit from the Ohio State fans, and maybe the Hoosier fans would back the Irish in a game like that and maybe hold the crowd down a little bit, 50-50, if you would say. But I really like both matchups for Notre Dame. I don't know if they have the explosive firepower that maybe Ohio State does, because they have Thomas, Ross is playing better, Scott's playing better, Aaron Craft is taking his game to another level here at the end of the Big Ten season as they go through and they win the Big Ten tournament today. So those are a couple teams that you have to look at. Ohio State's a team you have to look at that could make a big run, but I like the matchup there with Notre Dame. And this could be, even as a number 7 seed, could be the team for Mike Bray to break through, get to the Sweet 16, and make some noise there in that West region.